If you're thinking about moving to Boise, Idaho, well, it looks perfect online, safe, clean, and surrounded by mountains. But let's be honest, there's a lot that people don't mention. And I'm not just talking about the heat or the snow. I'm talking about that farm smell that drifts through the valley, the wild weather changes every few hours, and the fact that the city is growing faster than its roads can handle. It's beautiful here, but it is changing fast. So before you trade that city life for Idaho living, there are 5 things you need to know. All right, let's dive right into point number 1, which is the massive growth of the Boise, Idaho area. Boise, Idaho has definitely been one of the top relocation states for a very long time now, certainly since 2020, but honestly, since around 1990, it has been growing every single year. And of course, during 2020 to kind of 2022, during the COVID kind of boom era, there was a massive influx of people, mostly coming from California, Oregon, and Washington. However, I am also seeing people coming from other states now, Arizona, Texas, Florida, even parts of the Midwest and Colorado, oftentimes looking for a more conservative environment, which I'm going to touch on a little bit more in this video. Now, sometimes those folks are actually people that are originally from California, just happen to move somewhere else first before making the move over here, but still seeing massive growth. Now, the city of Boise has a population of around 275,000 people, and the city itself actually is not growing particularly fast. However, the suburbs is where most of the growth is, and specifically Meridian, Nampa, Caldwell, those are the fastest growing areas. But very quickly behind those, you got areas like Star and Middleton and Kuna. Those are all growing rapidly. Now, a high-end community, a suburb here is called Eagle, Idaho. Yes, it's growing, but its growth has slowed as well. Most of that new construction that's happening there is going to be higher price points. You pretty much cannot get into Eagle, Idaho for less than $800,000, but realistically closer to $1 million. Again, though, this growth is definitely expanding quite rapidly, and that's been a big problem for the Idaho natives in particular that are used to a much slower pace of life, a lot fewer people, and now there's a lot of traffic that's happening. You got a lot of people from out of state. It does feel like it's changing their culture. Idaho is starting to feel a lot more like California. Yeah, yes, there are still a lot of differences, and the people that are moving here are coming for that Idaho culture, but the people that are born and raised here are kind of resentful of all those Californians and Oregon and Washington folks that are moving in and driving up prices and just making things more congested. We only have one major freeway through here. That's called Interstate 84. It runs east to west through the valley here. And that really can get very, very trafficky, especially coming from Caldwell and Nampa into the city of Boise for work or school. And then especially also in the afternoon, you've got a lot of traffic coming the other direction out of Boise going back towards Caldwell. Now, there's also a lot of traffic that can build up on all the roads within the valley here. You've got a lot of 2 lanes and now sometimes 4-lane roads with a lot of stop signs and traffic lights. Essentially, this was originally actually smartly set up as a grid layout. So it's very easy to get around here. There's not like canyons and valleys that really cut things up, a lot of curving roads until you get into the foothills. But the main valley is essentially a grid. If you can kind of think of something like Phoenix, which is laid on a grid system, it's very similar to that, except there's no beltway that runs all the way around it like Phoenix does. You just have that one freeway. So the rest of the roads are mostly 2-lane country roads that have been turned into main roads with a lot of stoplights. So every mile or so, you have a stoplight or a stop sign. They are putting a lot more roundabouts, especially as you go more into areas like Nampa and Caldwell. We've kind of gotten ahead of that a little bit more with the newer subdivisions that are going in, or kind of anticipating where the growth is going. There's a lot more roundabouts that are going in there. There are some in Meridian, but mostly when you get into Meridian, Eagle, Boise, you're really just talking about traffic signals and stop signs. And it can get really bad, especially during the rush hours in the morning, from 7 to 9 a.m. or so, when people are going to work, going to school. So we actually live in Nampa, and we do a homeschool co-op program kind of in Meridian, Boise area. And without any traffic, it does take us about half an hour to get there. However, if we leave it just a little bit too late, it's taking 45 minutes to get there instead of that half hour. So that is like kind of the number one thing around here, is that if you're coming from another big city, we're trying to avoid a lot of traffic, you might be a bit surprised at how much traffic there is. Now, it's still not going to be anything like what you're used to if you're coming from Southern California or the Bay Area, where, yeah, it can definitely take 1 hour to 2 hours to get around. Mostly here, if you plan on about 20 minutes to get anywhere, generally speaking, that's kind of what to expect. But if you choose to live in an area that's maybe very central and you work and your kids go to school all there, it could be a very short commute, 5, 10, 15 minutes. Now, with all that growth, of course, it is taking over all these farm fields that Idaho is known for. is all the farming, the dairy, and those are being turned into subdivisions. Are there bigger lots here? Yes, there are. You can find 1 acre, 2 acre, 5 acre, and larger lots for sure, but you're gonna have to go further out to get those. And the prices on all those are definitely getting very expensive. Depending on what kind of acreage we're talking about, plan to spend anywhere from $50,000 up to a couple $100,000 per acre. If it's developed and meaning it has utilities brought into it, you're probably gonna be paying more if it's kind of a premium lot. There are even lots in subdivisions that are half acre that are going for $500,000 purely for the lot, especially if it's located on a lake or a pond. So don't come here thinking that land is cheap anymore. It has gotten expensive because of all that influx of growth. And that's also something that I hear about is with taking over the farm fields for subdivisions. Again, these homes are now getting on smaller and smaller lots. Kind of your average lot here, I would say, is between 6,000 to 10,000 square feet for a lot. Now, if you've got a 2-story home, you're probably gonna have a nice sized backyard, but don't come in here expecting you're gonna get half acre, an acre or more for a couple $100,000 with a house on it. That's just not going to happen. If you're looking for more acreage properties like a home on a half acre or an acre, you're probably gonna be looking to spend at minimum $600,000, and that's gonna be for an older home that likely needs a lot of work. If you're looking for a newer home that's much more updated, maybe only a few years old or even brand new, you're really looking at about $750,000 on up for larger lots. But I'm gonna be diving deeper into housing costs later in this video. I've talked with a lot of people either moving here or from here, and they get really frustrated with all of this land that's getting turned into homes. In fact, I've even had people choose to not move here because they grew up in Southern California and saw orchards get turned into homes, and they don't want to see the same thing happen here. And honestly, figuring out if Boise is the right fit for you and your lifestyle is just as important as the price of the homes or the weather here. Don't just scroll through listings online. You can't get a real feel for Idaho that way. If you're serious about making the move, reach out. My family and I made the move here ourselves from San Diego, so I know exactly what you're weighing and what to expect. I love walking people through that decision, answering all of your questions, and helping you find the right community that truly feels like home for you. So whether you're 9 days, 90 days, or even 2 years out from moving, I'll help you make sure that Boise is the right place for you. Next up is the culture shock here can be very real. Boise, Idaho itself, the city, is actually relatively liberal. I think roughly it votes about 55% Democrat, 45% Republican. Definitely leans more liberal. It does have a very liberal mayor. You can check out her Instagram. You're going to see all kinds of gay flags on her Instagram, promoting that kind of content for even children. On her Instagram account, the city of Boise itself has even adopted gay pride flags as official flags so that those can be flown, basically to circumvent an Idaho law that says only official city and state government flags can be flown. So these are things that Boise itself does to circumvent this and promote that ideology. Now, Boise really is a blue dot in a red sea here in Idaho. You have another pocket up in North Idaho, essentially Sandpoint area, that is definitely going to be more liberal. But down here in the Treasure Valley, got the city of Boise, it's definitely going to lean very liberal, but the communities around it are definitely going to be much more conservative. Now, the city of Meridian overall is going to be conservative, it definitely votes heavily conservative, but people are concerned about that becoming more purple as more and more Californians move in. And again, as you get further out, then you get more and more conservative. Eagle's pretty conservative, Star, Nampa, Cuna, Caldwell, Middleton lean very, very conservative. It's certainly why I moved here, leaving California during that COVID area where I was fed up with everything that's going on with the COVID stuff, but also with the direction of California and all the different things that they're doing to take away parental rights. And you're going to start ending up in jail for just saying free speech things now in California. And I wanted to get out before all that started to happen. And so really what I'm seeing is that most people that are moving here truly are conservative and looking for that. In fact, recently there was a survey that came out from the state of Idaho, and this past year, 75% of the people who are moving here voted Republican, 10% voted Democrat, another 15% were either independent or undeclared. So the idea that the state is turning purple or blue, I just do not see that happening. In fact, I've been seeing it get more conservative over the past couple years because the people that are moving here, honestly, are probably more conservative than the local Idahoans. But that being said, there is certainly a culture shift that can take place. Even though people are conservative, maybe they're not as comfortable being around firearms and handling firearms and seeing that out in public a lot more. Idaho is a Second Amendment state. It is a constitutional carry state. That means that you can conceal carry, you can open carry without a permit. Now, there's certain restrictions on, if you're drinking alcohol, of course, you can't be carrying, if you're at a school, that sort of thing. However, generally speaking, it's definitely going to be something that you need to be comfortable with seeing because that's definitely going to be a thing. Now, I don't see open carry here too often. However, it does happen. What I thought was really cool, and now this is obviously it's sad, but when Charlie Kirk was murdered in 2025, there was a huge outpouring of support for him. People were absolutely shocked here. And there were vigils that sprung up that same day that actually me and my wife went to. We went to one at Old State Saloon where they had a prayer vigil that evening and gave people a chance to express themselves and their anguish and their shock. And then we went over to the Idaho State Capitol steps where about 1,500 people had gathered spontaneously to celebrate Charlie Kirk's life. So that was super awesome to see. And that just shows you the type of people that are here and where our values align. And we're looking forward to seeing just continued growth around that movement that Charlie started. Now, next up, we do turn to the weather, and that is really what you'd probably deal with on a daily basis, whether or not you lean conservative or liberal, you're gonna be dealing with the weather regardless. Now, there's a lot to talk about the weather. We do have 4 distinct seasons here. And if you're coming from an area like California, maybe particularly Southern California, where you don't have as many seasons. Again, I'm from San Diego. I know basically perfect weather, 70 and sunny all the time. That's not the case here, but a lot of people are moving here for that 4-season weather. So let's talk a little bit about that. We're gonna talk a little about the extremes that we can get, but also what it's like on a daily basis. Now, I did mention that it can change practically hourly. We basically have a saying that's like, in the morning, it can be winter, in the late morning, it can be spring, early afternoon, it's fall, and then summer, actually when it's warmest, it can feel like summer. So you can get all 4 seasons in one day here in Boise, Idaho. But let's talk a little bit about those extremes and what to expect. First, let's talk about the heat. It can get very hot here, but it does vary year to year. The first year that I moved here, we had about 6 weeks over 100 degrees. The official records don't quite say that, but I remember looking at the weather every day and getting in my truck and seeing the temperature. It was over 100 degrees for about 6 weeks straight. And it can get up to about 110. I think the highest I've seen it get here is 111 degrees. That isn't as normal. In the summertime, you're generally gonna have probably somewhere between at least 1 to 3 weeks that are over 100 degrees, usually kind of broken up over the summer, and those are probably gonna range from about 100 to 105 degrees. But you can definitely have a lot of days in the 90s and certainly a lot of days in the 80s. So you're gonna have a pretty broad range. Now, there's a lot of great ways to beat the heat. We absolutely love going to the Boise River and cooling off. That water is snow-fed water coming from the mountains. We have tons and tons of water here, by the way. It doesn't rain a whole lot, doesn't snow a whole lot, but we have a huge aquifer and we get a lot of snow in the mountains that are captured by reservoirs, and that is stored, and that feeds the rivers, the lakes, the canals for irrigation season for both the farms and all the homes here. So lots of water. But that Boise River, because it's snow-fed, it's much cooler than the surrounding air temperatures. Just getting around it, it feels like it's going to drop the temperature about 10, 15 degrees. We love going there with our kids, letting them play in the water. We hop in, float down the river a little bit, and we like to just put our chairs in the water and sit there with our feet in the water, maybe drink a beer, eat dinner right on the river. Of course, you can go to the lakes as well and cool off, or there's a great water park here called Roaring Springs Water Park. We get season passes every single year, and to be honest, we really like it if it is closer to 100 degrees to go there, because the water is cooler, and if it gets a little bit windy and you get out and you're wet, that wind hits and you get cold. So if it's about 95 to 105 degrees, it feels absolutely perfect. Now, let's talk about the cold side, which is the winters here. If that's probably the number one thing that gets people, is how cold it can get here. A lot of people coming from other states, they're used to warmer weather, so that's not such a big deal, but it can get very cold. It can definitely get down into the single digits. I think I've only seen it go negative maybe once since I've been here, but it can happen. Generally speaking, you're probably gonna be in the high teens at night when it's the coldest during the winter, generally high teens at night, and in the 30s during the day. But again, there's a lot of range to that. It can be in the single digits, in the low teens, or it can be as high as the 40s during the winter. And honestly, if it feels like it's in the 40s, it's gonna feel relatively warm because it is dry here. And I didn't touch about that on the heat, but we do have a very dry, high desert climate. So we don't have really any humidity, and that affects both the heat and the cold. You're not gonna have that dampness that you're gonna get in parts of coastal California, or certainly like in the Midwest, where it does make things feel very wet and cold, or of course, very humid in the summer. So even though it's hot, even though it's cold, it does help temperate those different conditions quite a bit. So it's really not too bad. But yes, there can be stretches where it gets very, very cold into the single digits in teens, and you definitely need to layer, wear heavy jackets. And what can really drive people crazy is the inversion layer that we get here. The inversion layer is basically where it gets very cloudy for maybe a couple days to maybe several weeks, and you don't see the sun during that. It's fairly stagnant, so there's a lot of pollution that can build up. Any of those smells that occur here, I'm gonna talk about in a minute, those start to build up as well, and people can get seasonal affect depression or SAD. Basically, you can get depressed because you don't see the sun for a very long period of time. I highly recommend traveling during the winter. Go to Hawaii, go to a southern state where you're going to see the sun a lot more, it might be warmer, and pull yourself out of that and help get you through the rest of the winter. Now, spring and fall and certainly summer are amazing times here, but spring and fall it's going to be cooler overall, but still warm. So you can do a lot of outdoor activities. Spring's wonderful. Everything just comes to life. Everything's going into bloom. All the farms here are starting to become green as they start to grow. And it's just an absolutely wonderful time to be here. Spring and fall are definitely your best seasons here in the valley. Now we got two more things to cover. We're going to be talking about how things have changed, but also regarding that weather, what are all those smells and weird things and bugs and stuff like that that you got to deal with. And just as a reminder, if you are looking to make the move here, all you got to do is reach out to me. We'll walk you through all the different areas here. We'll cover any questions that you have about politics here, the weather, the smells, and exactly what kind of area you're looking to move into so we can help you make that smooth move here. So the biggest thing with how things have changed is in home prices for sure. So we got to address that. We talked a little bit about acreage properties and what to expect, but here's the thing is a lot of people that are looking to move here to Idaho still have expectations of Idaho home pricing from 6 years ago, pre-COVID pandemic era pricings. A lot of people are coming here thinking they can buy a house for $300,000. It's going to be on a half acre and it's a huge home. This is not the case anymore. Obviously, the housing market is in flux all the time. It's up, it's down, it's flat, it's sideways, it's all kinds of things, right? So that's why you got to reach out so we can talk through what that looks like in exactly today's scenario with mortgage rates and all those things. But, generally speaking, just depends on the type of home that you're looking for. If you're looking for kind of an affordable home, blue collar, middle-class type home, you're pretty much going to be looking to spend probably somewhere between $450,000 on the low end to about $700,000, depending on where you end up. That's in the city of Boise. You're definitely going to be looking somewhere between more the 500 to 700 range. Same with Meridian. Eagle, you're going to be looking much higher price points. You're going to be looking more like $800,000 up to about $2 million. Going to be much more luxury in Eagle, Idaho. There's also luxury in every single subdivision here. Now, I mentioned Eagle as being luxury. There is going to be luxury everywhere here throughout the valley. There's also going to be very affordable homes everywhere throughout the valley. This valley is very interesting. You're going to find luxury homes next to farm fields. You're going to find luxury homes next to very middle class type homes. It's very interspersed. You're going to see that the zoning here is really strange. You're going to see storage facilities right next to subdivisions. You're going to see farm fields right next to subdivisions. It's just a huge mix of zoning here. But you are going to find luxury everywhere throughout the valley. And you're even going to be able to find $500,000 homes in Eagle. There's going to be older or mid-century type homes than something brand new. Now, if you're looking for the most affordable homes, you're probably going to want to look at areas in Nampa and Caldwell in particular. And then moving out from there, you also got Kuna and Middleton where you can still get affordability. It's also going to be your best value for acreage property in each of those areas. In Nampa, Caldwell, Middleton, Kuna, you can find properties that are half acre, acre, and larger for a little bit more affordable. Your most expensive homes are going to be more that Meridian, Star, and Eagle areas. Star is growing big time. We need to touch on Star a bit because it's a very popular area. It's still small, only about 19,000 people, but it's grown over the past few years from 15,000 people, and it's basically doubled in size in the last 8 years or so. The Star is super cool. It's a very small town feel, very patriotic, very family friendly. So if that's what you're looking for, Star is a great option. A lot of my clients end up moving into Star, and there's a mix of homes from very affordable on the low 400s. I just showed a house at $420,000 yesterday in Star, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, up to multi-million-dollar homes. But if you want to live in an area where you've still got cows around you, goats, farm fields, hobby farms, and nice luxury subdivisions, it's a whole mix right there in Star. And finally, we need to talk about the pests, the smells, the insects, the things that you're going to deal with on potentially a daily basis. And it really is going to depend where you end up. But let's talk first about the insects that are here. We have a big fly problem here in the Treasure Valley. Now, it can vary depending on where you are. There might be less or more. And certainly if you're going to be closer to farms, to dairies, to maybe where there's chickens, you're going to have a lot more flies. It's just naturally going to attract them, and there'll be a lot more of them. I live in Nampa, and we do get a lot of flies here, but most people around the valley do complain about flies. Now, is your house going to be overrun by them? You're going to have a plague? Probably not plague proportions, but there are times, I've had times where I've had 20, 30 flies in my house, and it drives me nuts. So there's ways to mitigate that. I have fly zappers that I've set up. I have one in my house. I have one in my garage. Kind of a cool party trick, so to speak. I scare people unintentionally so, but we'll have the fly zapper off and boom, it'll go off. And everyone kind of jumps like, what was that? It's like, oh, sorry, it's my fly zapper. But it definitely helps take care of any flies that get in the house. I've got 3 little kids. My back door gets left open all the time. So it happens. We do love eating outside. However, during the summertime, there's definitely going to be flies out there. So we have the little fly fan things that restaurants have that we put out that helps keep them away. And the fly season generally runs from about July through October. It's about 3, maybe 4 months long. But once it gets cold, they all go away. You're also going to have mosquitoes here, and they do spray for mosquitoes, which obviously can be a concern depending on where they're spraying, what are they using exactly. But they do spray for mosquitoes to help keep them at bay. But if you live near a body of water, near an artificial pond, near a sort of lake or a canal, you're definitely going to have probably more of a mosquito issue. But they're not massive mosquitoes. Now, they're not the size of a state bird, but there's definitely going to be a bit of a mosquito issue. So you could have that issue if you're out in the evening. You might get bit by mosquitoes. We also have ticks here throughout the valley, mostly in the foothills. If you're in the valley itself, you're probably gonna be fine. However, there are reports occasionally, even at parks, because they might fall off a tree, of people getting bit by ticks. I do have one friend who did get Lyme's disease here. Their daughter got Lyme's disease at a park. It's a park we love going to. We still go there a lot, but it is a potential risk, especially if you have dogs and you go out into the foothills and dogs run through the brush. They might get ticks. Lyme's disease is fairly rare here. It's not that common, but it can happen. Now, I will say we were considering moving to another state in Missouri because that's where my sister-in-law and brother-in-law moved to, but my wife got bit by a tick when we visited there and she got Lyme's disease. So we expedited that off the list very quickly. We did select here because yes, we were aware that there are ticks here, but generally speaking, it's not a problem. Now, the big thing that people deal with here is the smell, and that could potentially be almost anywhere in the valley. Now, if you're in the city of Boise, if you're in Meridian, if you're in parts of Eagle, probably not so much, and even for the most part in Star. As you get more rural into places like Kuna, Nampa, Caldwell, Middleton, there's a lot more farms out here. There's a lot more dairies, so you got pigs, cows, goats, sheep, and you've got fertilizer, manure that's used on the farm fields. You're going to have a lot more smell. So you could be in a very nice subdivision and be very close to a dairy farm that's going to kick up a lot of smells. And depending on how the wind blows, you're going to be smelling that. So that's something you definitely need to be aware of when you're out here looking for homes. We can talk about those areas of where maybe the smells might be, where to avoid. But, it just depends on how the wind blows. When you're out looking at homes, it's a good idea to check out the neighborhood, drive around, get out of your car, and see if you can handle it. I get occasional smells from farms that are nearby. It's more of a fertilizer smell. It doesn't bother me at all. It's very light and very occasional, but I have clients that have moved in and then they've discovered that there's a dairy nearby and they get all that smell and it's not pleasant at all. The other thing is that in North Nampa, there is a sugar beet factory and that kicks off quite the smell. And depending on the time of year can vary, but generally speaking, it smells like cooked peanut butter. And the whole shopping area in Nampa, it's kind of like the Nampa Caldwell area, it can smell really bad there because it's right next to it. So generally speaking, I would be very careful about moving in there just for potential resale value, and you'd be smelling that in that North Nampa area because of that strong smell. You definitely need to check it out and see if that's something that you can handle. But again, that can blow into the west side of Meridian and it can kind of cover parts of the valley. So definitely in Nampa, parts of Meridian, you're gonna potentially come across that sugar beet smell. Well, if these things haven't scared you off by now, then Boise, Idaho might just be the right place for you because yes, we've got wild weather, farm smells, a city that's growing faster than ever, much more conservative politics here, but that's also what makes living here so unique. You get real seasons, real space, and a true community that feels connected. It's one of the few places left where people wave when you drive by, kids play outside, and you can be in the mountains in less than an hour. My family made the move from San Diego, so I know firsthand how big of a decision it is to relocate here, and that's why I love helping families just like you figure out if Boise is truly the right fit, not just for a house, but also for your lifestyle. So if you're serious about making the move out here to the Boise, Idaho area, don't just browse listings online, just reach out to me. Again, whether you're 9 days, 90 days, or even a couple years away, I hope you find just the right home, the right subdivision, the right community that's perfect for you and help make that move just as smooth as possible. And if you want to dive even deeper in, just check out this next video and I'll see you on that video.